Hello and welcome to another episode of Connecting with Kinetic. I'm here with Nick, CEO of Enosis, which is the leading DEX on the Flare network and one of Kinetic's wonderful partners. How are you today, Nick?
Hey Jake, I'm great. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I am fantastic. It's Friday. We're seeing an end to the meetings. I don't know about you, but I got a lot of meetings. People love meeting. You'd
Yep.
think when we're all remote, maybe not, but no, we love it.
I mean, people always love to connect and to catch up, especially at the end of the week. For me, usually Wednesdays are the most intense days, but yeah, Fridays are always out there alongside.
So let's go into your background a bit. I heard you talking about this on a Twitter space, I believe, but I heard that you joined your first startup at 14, which considering what I was doing at 14, seems insane to me. Maybe I wasn't top of my class, but I thought I was a regular 14-year-old. Never would have imagined doing that. So please fill me in on how that happened.
So first of all, I definitely was never top of my class for sure. But yeah, I definitely felt at the time as a regular 14-year-old that didn't feel like something special was going on. Essentially, how everything started was out of curiosity. I started, working around computers a bit more, and when I found out how to do the basic stuff, formatting and so on, I started being more creative around it, and eventually I somehow stumbled onto a course at one of the universities in Athens. There I met an amazing person, Enosis, who is now lead of Common Prefix. And yeah, from there on, I just fell in love with programming and design eventually, and building products overall, right? So at around 14, as we mentioned, I started building in one of the first startups that I joined. And from there on, it kind of went back and forth from one startup to another. At that period of time, I would say it was quite of a boom, especially in Greece, where I grew up, around startups. So there were many ideas out there, which some failed, others were quite successful, gladly. So yeah, that's kind of how I started in fast forward, let's say.
That's wild to me. I was from a small town, so giving a presentation for my like school body of like 200 people would be like the max I could handle. I can't imagine. So, skipping ahead, what inspired the initial concept of Enosis, and how did your role evolve from being the first team member to then becoming the CEO?
So the initial inspiration came out of actually a meeting. As I have mentioned before, started as one of the first, I would say, team member. Before Enosis, we were trying to build a different product together that didn't go through. It never actually launched, unfortunately. There was not that much ask as well. And eventually, at one of the meetings that um, we had this very interesting idea of having multiple DeFi and kind of blockchain oriented products all under one umbrella, like Adobe has, right? Or great example, a suite of products essentially where you could use each one that would cover each one of your needs, but under one branding that you can trust, and so on, with different aspects of your life. Something like, let's say, a bank, right? When you enter a bank, you have this user experience where there's a very lovely person on the other end. They're smiling to you, they welcome you, and then you can use a bunch of products from their own, right, without leaving the counter. essentially that was that is the kind of grown vision of Enosis. Initially, it just started as a suite of products, of several DeFi-oriented products. It was DeFi summer also at that time, so DeFi was quite popular. And by combining that and the power of Flare and the interest it was carrying around it at the time, we kind of built the fundamentals for what Enosis is today.
Do you have a specific product that you're most proud of out of your suite?
Oof, that's a very hard question. Since we have like 11 products right now, plus the partnerships that we have launched and the products that we have partnered with and built for, I would say personal favorite one is Hermes, which allows users to redeem their NFTs, their collectibles, into real world goods. Personally, I can see tons of use cases for that. Personal favorite would be high fashion design, I would say. Being a collector and being inspired by many designers and artists out there in high fashion design, I believe it's one of the most groundbreaking technologically things for that field, which can make the way that we shop and we dress much more sustainable, and much more creative, let's say, and also very interesting for the collectors out there, for people who might buy something not for the reasons of wearing it or using it to day, but to flip it or to collect it and so on. NFTs overall have proven themselves to have that magic, that power, let's say, of doing that, and especially by combining the NFT aspect with physical goods, especially if we're talking about brands like Dior did something close to the NFT release very soon. Gucci, brands like that could definitely go a level up by those, let's say, by using those technologies. So I would
Right.
say Hermes would be my favorite one.
Yeah, I mean that's something that we've kind of, I'm into NFTs as well. And that's something that we've kind of been waiting for, right, for a long time. There's been a few people that have kind of dipped their toes into that. But that and gaming seems to be, to me, like the most clear use cases for NFTs. I know there's like, stuff like home deeds and other things. As far as what's exciting to me, it's like, yeah, getting real goods to have a digital representative that you can move places. And for games, having, digital stuff have another thing that you can move places. I mean, getting locked into ecosystems is obnoxious. Oh, we're going to make a new thing. Let's sell you skins again. So it's something that I felt like would have been solved by now. But it's just, there's so much, everything's fast, and then there's so much waiting as well. Going back to your interests, besides high fashion design, and feel free to talk more about that. Are there other things that you're interested in, like art or music, that kind of make their way into how you think about Enosis?
Yeah, definitely. So on the side of the creatives, I guess both art and music are two things that are very close to me. On the side of art, we have been very closely partnering with Art on Internet, AOI, through the past year. And I've had the honor to work with some of the most acknowledged, I would say, artists in the NFT space and in the art world overall, and meet some quite amazing people out there, like Jack Butcher, like Eric Snowfro, the founder of Art Blocks, and other amazing artists out there, and see them work and see what I can learn from them and what I can kind of take away from their creative process into how I lead my team, or into the creative processes that we have internally. And also pushing the boundaries of what art can be together with them. A very good example is the three slashes, the forward slashes project by Eric Snowfro, which was released for the Velocity series. That is a very interesting project because that is a dynamically generated on-chain collection, which comes along with an embroidered piece. So essentially, whatever the algorithm is generating, it also generates an embroidery file, which we went ahead then and embroidered on some Red Bull Racing hats. And now people using the Hermes protocol would be able to get their embroidered artwork on the hat, essentially, from Eric. Actually is being released on Monday, 26th of February. So the redemption process will be available then. That is on the side of the arts. On the side of music, I have been producing music for many, many years now. I would say 14 years for sure. And I have been a DJ very actively in the Greek scene in the past for like 5 years at least. So yeah, I hope that as Enosis, we will be able to push the boundaries more and more over the years. And as we gain more resources and more traction, we would be able to help artists of any disciplines out there to achieve their dreams and to achieve their goals and to do something exciting and something that will live forever with their name, right?
I mean, that's just so cool, and something that I'm constantly surprised by when I talk to people in Web3 is how many people have a creative background. Certainly, the way that probably people from the outside think of blockchain technology and Web3 is, I mean, of course, it's programming focused, but you know, if you're a programmer, it doesn't mean you don't have any creative talent. It's very, very, very obviously the opposite 99% of the time. And you know, the way that it's been able to be used as a creative outlet for me, for you, for others, it's just one facet that I feel like isn't talked about much because it's something I keep running into every time I talk to someone. I'm like, oh, you were a playwright. Oh, you produce music. Like, you know, everybody's got their own thing. I wonder if there's some kind of connective tissue there that brings us into the chaos that is Web3.
Yeah, I assume, I don't know for you, but you phrased it very nicely that the chaotic nature, I believe, is something that most of us probably found interesting because there is so much within this chaos, right? There is so much beautiful organization when you really sit down and like start digesting what is going on and how it's exactly working, because you need to really forget everything that you know in order to really understand Web3. And for creative people, that is some sort of rebirth almost, right? Therefore, in my opinion, and I would love to hear about your creative experiences with Web3, but in my opinion, it's that kind of chaos which brings almost rebirth for the creative nature and the possibilities that you have.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. It's very attractive, and something I talk about sometimes is because I was a playwright. I have a master's degree in theater, so I did a lot of shows, produced my own shows, and something with theater is it's very hard, especially in America. If you're not on Broadway, of course, to get an audience, to keep an audience, to have someone read your work as a writer is incredibly difficult. Especially if it's not like a novel or something, it's just like stuff that's meant to be performed. It's hard to do it in America. And, you know, through NFTs and other token launch projects I did on Web3, it's so much easier to talk to, connect with, collaborate with people on kind of anything. I mean, people are up for anything. And that was the biggest thing that to me that was wild. It's like sometimes you feel like you're in a vacuum when you're trying to work on creative stuff, and people are getting more and more distant by the day. But in this digital space that has, sort of a connection to monetary value, but a very general one. I mean, you can find a community. It's like, oh, we all like the same token, but it's really easy to find other creatives, other people to work on stuff because we're just all interested in learning.
Yeah.
So it's been amazing, an amazing experience.
Yeah, agreed. Totally agreed. And the financial kind of direction, yes, it is there. But one thing that I love to keep like reminding people of is that crypto is equal to blockchain, right? Like there is no crypto without blockchain. However, blockchain isn't equal to crypto, right? There is so many things beyond crypto out there in like within the use cases of blockchain, for art, for health tech, for music, right? For so many things and forms out there, even for shipping, right? One of the most successful things for the blockchain technology, which very few people talk about, is the shipping industry, right? Most of successful shipping companies right now work using blockchain ledger technologies, right? So yeah, that's for me a very important, I would say, point to carry around, because yes, we build products that have financial aspects like which they carry around. However, for us, that is not, let's say, the most important thing out there. It's about creating innovative and more human user experiences, right? And blockchain is something very, very lacking, I would dare to say, of that.
Definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's not exactly the flashiest that's going on behind the scenes, but that's going to end up being the most impactful. Going into user experience, it seems like that is a big priority for you. So in regards to how Enosis handles it, how do you prioritize and enhance user experiences, user interactions with your platform?
um That's a question which has multiple like levels of answer, let's say. So first of all, of course, nowadays we check a lot the numbers and what the statistics are saying. We're making some assumptions as we are a research center. That's what we usually do. We start with an assumption, and then we experiment around that assumption. And depending on which one of the aspects kind of wins, we continue with that, increasing all constantly, hopefully, the retention and the user kind of what the numbers say about the user experience to us. That's one of the aspects. The second one, and the most important in Web3, comparing also to all the Web2 companies I have been working at as a designer, you can go to Discord, and I still to this day try to go to Discord all the time and like write a couple of messages to people, see what their frustration is, see what they're talking about, what they hate, what they like, right? See what the interest is in that particular period of time, right? So the people who are your users at the end of the day, your end customers, are there to tell you exactly what you should look into, right? So I would say more than 50% of how we prioritize goes through that. And also the news around us, right? Crypto is a very cyclical industry, I would say, although we don't like to recognize that to ourselves. But things kind of go around, and something is very, very interesting right now. We obviously need to put a lot of effort and focus on that thing that is interesting for the people, because at that point of time, people recognize some things that might be not working perfectly or need improvements and so on. So we always need to listen to that. And I would say an important but small percentage is kind of trying to predict what the next important for the user thing would be. So we could kind of clean that up and prepare for the next wave, for the next kind of cycle that would be coming up. So I guess that's the way we prioritize overall.
I mean, it's an interesting point to bring up that it's so different to running a normal business. Not only, other businesses sometimes have discords, but like, who's in there? No one. Like, nobody's going in there. Maybe, and the people that are going to go into like a paper company's discord, you probably don't want to talk to those guys. Like, why are you in there? For us, everybody's kind of like trained to like be in these spaces, and everybody's expecting to be in close contact with the people behind a project. So it's, I feel like it should be the model going forward, right? I don't know how to facilitate it, but it's incredibly useful to just be like, hey guys, what do you want?
Yeah.
And they can just tell you. You don't have to like, go through a lot of stuff, have someone prepare a report. Obviously that stuff helps, but you can just ask them.
Yeah, and here people, like, the hardest thing for me, because you mentioned, well, I'm not really sure how to facilitate it. It's a very interesting point, because it's almost like having a room at your office where at all times people from any culture, any religion, any background, like any kind of person can walk into that room and hang out with the rest of the people. And just the facilitation of the conversation between the people themselves, right? Not even the questions that are coming to you and are asked about your company, but just the conversation that naturally starts by people being in one room. It's so usually hard to kind of facilitate and make sure everybody's nice to everyone, nobody's getting hurt, no like bad things are said, and so on. And that's like a part of a company in traditional like means, I guess, by itself right nowadays. And that's beautiful, honestly, because at the end of the day, we're building products for the people out there. It's not just about the numbers, gladly. It's mostly about solving the problems, the new coming like questions and problems that we can with this technology, and it takes much more than looking at statistics and numbers.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot that can go wrong, but the good that comes from it far outweighs it. And as far as company culture being flexible, like, I feel like on Web3 you have so much freedom to like insert personality, insert a lot of things that other companies can't really get away with. I think some companies are adapting to this, right? You see some brands being snarky on Twitter or whatever, but you're never gonna see like the same kind of stuff that goes down on Web3 with those brands, because they're not that flexible. Maybe things will change. I've seen some crazy stuff that some brands have been posting on TikTok, but in general, that kind of like community hub thing that we're already on the same page on, that is something that I don't know if another place can really replicate.
Yeah, no, I think it would be very hard. It's a very interesting space from multiple social perspectives, right? Because people in the space started by having a common goal, right? Starting in crypto in around 2013, I believe, 14, maybe earlier. We were just a couple of developers around here, honestly, and kind of all having the same goal of learning and figuring out what we can do with this. Back then, there was no DeFi, there was none of this, right? So the cultural background also allow for a very different kind of growth, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great equalizer. I mean, you don't have to be from a certain kind of background to get anywhere. a lot of the middlemen, I mean, that's kind of the whole point, right? Is to get rid of a lot of that gatekeeping that exists in finance, in, I mean, entertainment and media, even. There's a lot of that. You know,
Yeah.
it's, you know, you may say like, oh, you know, it's money motivated, but like, yeah, people have a common kind of goal for what they want to do. And that at least brings you together. And then it's like, okay, well, what do we do? Like, what can we do? And that's when some of the coolest stuff happens.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the Enosis bridge and the V3 upgrade. Could you explain the primary motivations and technical improvements behind upgrading Enosis's bridge to V3?
So there are several things around that update I would love to touch on. There's a couple of steps that we decided to move forward with, especially since we met with Kinetic. The one would be the upgrade of our bridge, where we started adding more assets to be available on the Flare network, such as wrapped ETH and Quant and other assets to be added. So first of all, multiple bridged assets still without kind of giving up on any security measures that we have and we have discussed in the past. So multiple assets, and from there on, we are about to start supporting assets which have transactional taxes, such as Pax Gold, for example, and other assets out there. So about to add more of very famous and known assets from Ethereum there. And last but not least would be an update which would allow for the validators to both sign more transactions simultaneously, but also have a much cheaper spend on gas. Therefore, the users that would be utilizing our bridge would be able to do that by paying, I would dare to say, even less than half of the fees they're paying right now. So that would be a huge update. And alongside with that, we have been working on the version 3 of our DEX, which is a much more capital efficient version of a decentralized exchange. That will allow for partners and users to create much more efficient markets and to have more exposure, less exposure, depending on their needs and what exactly they're trying to achieve with utilizing the DEX, right? Right now, there are very specific things that you can do with the version of the exchange that we have. And it has been gladly covering the needs of our users so far. But as the network and the people on the network grow, the DEX that we're about to bring will be both kind of helping out the users that we have, putting their capital in a better use, but also bringing on the partners and giving them more incentives on utilizing our DEX, among others.
I mean, it's everything seems to be getting ready to kick it in a high gear on Flare, so it's going to be really exciting. Looking, you know, to the far future, considering your whole suite of products, what would you say is kind of the long-term vision of Enosis?
I would say the long-term vision of Enosis is to be a hub of unity, let's say, of both blockchains, but also projects. And essentially what we're trying to achieve is, through the position that we have on Flare network, to allow multiple, both larger as well as smaller networks out there connects both their communities, but also the community of their builders and the tools that they have under one umbrella, and essentially share everything that we have all built under one place and with one unified infrastructure provision, essentially.
A big dream.
Yep, definitely.
My final question, and I think you're a really good person for this. What advice would you give to other builders in the blockchain space, especially those interested in creating interoperable solutions? Because you've got a lot of experience.
That's a good one. Definitely be kind, be very patient. Don't expect people to, by default, understand the things that you would like them to understand. You might have to repeat yourself 10, 15 times, and the person might still not understand it. It's okay. They have not been around for that long or anything like that. So yeah. And the last one I would say is be honest and do not get greedy, because it would backfire faster than you expected to. So, it's very easy to cheat in the space, let's put it like that. It's very easy to kind of go down a shady route. But unfortunately, for many other, everything that happens on blockchain will stay there for many, many years, fortunately for us. So, think about it twice if you're trying to do something shady.
Yeah, it's that short-term versus long-term greed is something I talk about. You can, even outside of just scamming, like some people are just trying to create a cash grab. I'll provide a small amount of utility or a product or something for a small amount of time so I can get a good enough amount of money and then leave. Which is, to me, so silly when you're in a space that we're so early, and there's so much more growth that can happen. So yeah, that persistence, patience, and controlling your greed, I think, are some really good points of advice for people, young and old, out there in the Web3 space.
Yeah, and always be kind to the others. You never know what life has there for them.
Right. It's hard when everyone's behind a PFP to really empathize, but we're all people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was a fantastic interview. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope we can talk again sometime soon.
Of course, I hope so as well. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.